on environmental topics, on energy topics of all kinds, even on issues as mundane as roads and bridges and engineering kinds of expertise. The legislature is practically void of any kind of scientific expertise, and unless we access the experts that live and work in Indiana through our universities, we often are making public policy decisions in the dark, and it's almost frightening, really. Some of the huge public policy discussions that take place with lay people like me, who know a little bit about many things, but we're making public policy, we're making law that will affect people on many different levels, much deeper than our knowledge base could possibly cover. And so it's imperative in my mind that there be more cooperation and better communication between the universities and the people who work there and public policymakers. And I would include that in that group, the governor and others who work to make public policy for the state. I would say no. I would say we do not. And unfortunately, what happens is that the people who work in the lobby, the so-called lobbyists, often are the ones who provide most of the information on technical issues like the ones we mentioned. I've worked a lot in the environmental arena, for instance, and it is often corporations and their representatives who are sitting at the table providing information. And it is not very often that we have people with unbiased but scientific expertise to help us proceed. You have to be really aggressive to go out and seek it out. I learned early on, because I represent Bloomington, that we have this wonderful group of people who are willing to help if you make the effort to find them. But you know, I don't even know who to call on some issues, and so I think there must be a better way to build that kind of cadre of experts who are willing to help us. There are people, for instance, in SPIA that I talk to about tax policy, and I've come to know people in the geology department and others who help with things like energy policy and environmental policy. But I'm in a unique situation from my colleagues in the legislature because I have this wonderful resource in my backyard. Not everybody does, and so if it's difficult for me to track down the right person, then it must be doubly difficult for some of my colleagues. The only mechanism is this one, and we have a group of lawyers that work for the legislature called Legislative Services Agency, LSA, and we can ask them to find information for us. Each of the 4 caucuses, Democrat, Republican, in both the House and the Senate, have policy people on our own staff, again, who are pretty much generalists, but some of them are better than others at tracking down some expertise. Often the idea for a bill comes from someone in your own community or your own constituency group. And I can remember, for instance, working with people from SPIA on a Wetlands Protection Act. But the idea for the legislation itself came from the professors that I worked with. And so I didn't have to go searching for that information. It was all provided for me, and we had a great fun with that. The ideas for bills come from all kinds of places, and often they come from people who have an interest in that particular topic. I'm a big believer that scientists and others with technical expertise of various kinds, which could help policymakers in their decision making, should be very aggressive about reaching out. You can't assume that legislators, for instance, know who you are. And I say this to all citizens, not just to faculty members or people with technical expertise or experience, but anybody. It is your responsibility as a citizen to make sure not only that you know who your legislators are, who your elected representatives are, who your public policy makers are, but that they know who you are and what expertise you could bring to the table in order to participate. You know, I think a lot of people, a lot of voters expect, okay, I elect you to office, and therefore I turn over all my responsibilities to you, and you figure it out. But that's not how it works. I mean, in a practical sense, it may be what we'd like to think we do for, in our jobs, but in a practical sense, I am so incredibly busy with my job, and I have so many topics that I have to deal with. Over 1,000 bills introduced every session on maybe 800, 700 different topics, and I cannot possibly know everything I need to know to make the right decision on those bills. And so if I know somebody in my community that I trust, somebody who has made themselves available to me so that they could answer questions if I have them, or even to come and testify at a committee hearing, it makes my life so much easier. And I guess I am in the camp. I believe that it is every citizen's responsibility not to do more than vote. Voting is, you know, we all believe in that. That's easy. But to go beyond that, to take that next step and say, I want to participate in this process. I don't want to just be a standby person, you know, just an onlooker. I want to work with you, Miss Senator, to make this legislation work. And this is what I know about. Maybe I'm a nurse, and maybe I work in hospice, and so I have expertise on in that whole end of life scenario. Or maybe I'm a dentist and I know a lot about fluoride treatments or something. Everybody has expertise to bring to the table, but I don't know who you are if you don't make yourself known to me. And I think there is a lot of room for growth in that whole area. It would make us better legislators, and honestly, it will make you a better citizen because you'll be participating more directly in the process. Well, Dr. Rahman and I have been friends for a while, and he and I have talked over the years about about how to make the science community more involved, more interested in the political environment, how to connect the people with the technical knowledge, the research ability, with the public policy makers, because we both felt that there was a huge disconnect. When in spending time with Dr. Rahman, I found out that about some of the great work that he has done and others, not only at IU but around the state, in research projects for NASA. And I realized if I didn't know that information, it's likely that most of my colleagues really didn't know it. And I think it would be very helpful, not only for NASA, but for the university community and for us as public policymakers to share that information. I think, we have these struggles all the time about university budgets and what kind of investment are we making in higher education. And I think it's really helpful for legislators to know what is going on besides, basic English composition and the traditional coursework that everybody knows takes place. There are all these wonderful things, this gathering of knowledge that, to me, will become the economic engine of the state in the future, and trying to make that connection as often as we can with legislators will make our job easier in terms of funding for universities, and in terms of the thing we talked about earlier, which is helping us make better public policy because we've opened up the lines of communication. In my opinion, if there is scientific information that refutes a direction that public policy is moving, it's not only important that we get that information, but it's vital. I mean, it's the scientific community's responsibility to make sure we know those things. Hopefully, won't always happen, but hopefully we can make a change in the direction we're going if we have all of the information. If, for instance, there is one scientist who is saying, I'm right in the direction I'm going, but there are 95 scientists saying, no, that's really wrong. If I'm only hearing from the one, you can see what huge mistakes could be made in a lot of very important efforts.